Hello there and welcome to the Card Grotto. Today I have a quick and easy way to add colouring to stamped images using stencils and ink blending. So let's get started. First of all, I have die cut one of the Altenew Terrific tag dies from some Nina Classic Crest £110 solar white cardstock. This is one of the larger size in that set and it's got that lovely fishtail banner at the bottom which I really like. I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine with the Altenew Deck Planks 3D embossing folder. This is a really pretty folder, one of my favourites. It's got a lovely wood grain texture to it and I think it works really nicely with lots of different images, especially florals. It just adds some kind of subtle interest into the background. It's a bit difficult to see here on camera unfortunately, but in real life it's very pretty and it works really nicely from the front and the back, which is really nice with that embossing folder. I want to bring out the wood grain kind of pattern a little bit more onto the tag, so I'm going to add some ink blending to the bottom of the tag. I'm going to concentrate most of the colour at the bottom and then kind of fade it up to white at the top. I'm using the Caribbean Sky colour from the Altenew Glacier Caves ink die set. I just have the little cubes, I find them really handy to have, really great for storage because they're a bit smaller as well, and I'm just using a large ink blending tool there. This is the Craft Your Life Hello Beautiful project kit from Altenew. Really lovely florals in this stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp one onto some more white cardstock. I'm using Altenew Obsidian black pigment ink. Although this is a pigment ink, I do find that it dries quite a bit quicker than some of the other kind of pigment inks on the market, so I've been using it quite a lot recently, and I love that with pigment inks you get that really crisp image straight away. You don't kind of have to restamp it multiple times. So I did let that dry for a little while, and then I want to add some colour onto it, so I'm going to use the simple colouring stencils from the Altenew Craft Your Life project kit. I love that everything kind of comes in that one kit, but if you didn't want to buy a kit with everything in it, there are lots of other images that have these simple colouring stencils as well. So I'm just going to place the first stencil over that image here, and it doesn't kind of cover the whole of the images, if that makes sense. So there are some areas that I do need to mask off with post-it tape because otherwise I'm just going to ink blend through them by accident. So for the petals, I'm going to use some blue colours. I really love blues for florals. I'm kind of obsessed with blues for florals at the moment. So I'm using the same Glacier Caves ink. And this is the Caribbean Sky again that I'm adding on first, and then I'm going to use the Persian blue and just add a little bit more definition to it. These stencils do actually come so that you can add different layers to them with different colours of ink to kind of build up the dimension, but I didn't want to do that today. I just wanted kind of like a flat colour but still have some dimension to it. So I'm just rubbing off those ink blending tools here, and that's just going to get rid of that darker colour so that I can go back to the lighter colour again. Just using a cloth, I find that quite helpful. I do like these little ink blending tools for stencils in particular. I find that they kind of get into all of the nooks and crannies, which is really nice. And they're quite easy to hold for me personally. So I'm just going to go through and add all of the colour onto these petals here. I'm kind of leaving some white highlights at the edges of the petals and then having sort of the darker colour towards the middles. And this part of the stencil here does kind of have two of the flowers, kind of flower parts, if that makes sense, so that's quite helpful, so I didn't have to mask off as much. And then I can replace that stencil and then fill it in the bottom of the flower here, so the last two petals. And then I can replace that stencil for the centres of the flowers, and for this I'm using the Altenew Full Harvest inks. These are kind of like a duller yellow toned to them. I think they're really nice for the centres of flowers. So I'm just using the two lighter shades out of the set for this. And the areas is so small, so you can't really see a huge amount of definition on these, but I still wanted to use the two colours. And then last but not least, I'm going to add the leaves with the Greenfields inks. And these are one of my favourite inks. I think they're kind of like a true green colour, but I would like to try and get maybe some other kind of tones of greens as well, but I use these quite a lot. So I'm just using the two lighter shades again, kind of leaving the edges of the leaves a little bit white and then going in with that darker colour towards the centres. And then my favourite part, like masking, you get to reveal your handiwork, and I think that looks really pretty just with that kind of one layer of colour. But I'm going to show here that the one on the right is used with the two layers of the stencils, so it's just a completely different look, and I do like both of them. So I've die cut that image with the coordinating dies, and they come in the kit as well. And I've also cut an additional 2 layers of white cardstock just so that I can layer them up. Quite often I would use foam tape, but I thought on this occasion I would layer them up with the cardstock. So I'm using tape runner here. Ordinarily I probably would use liquid adhesive, but I wanted to try out this tape runner here from Altenew. Obviously, because this video is going up on the Altenew channel as well, I do have to use their products, but I definitely wouldn't use something that I didn't like. But I actually really liked this tape runner, and a little bit later I'll show you why. So I'm going to start on the sentiment here, and this is the Best Wishes sentiment from the Sentiment Strips 2 set. I've been using the Sentiment Strips 1 and 2 sets quite a lot recently. I really love just the kind of basic font of them, and there's loads of different sentiments in it. So I'm just prepping some black cardstock with an anti-static powder tool and stamped that down with the embossing ink, which is a clear sticky ink. And then I can apply the white embossing powder here. I like to apply it a few times, tap off the excess, and then I like to heat set from the front and the back. And I'm just going to heat set that until the embossing powder is completely melted and it goes lovely and smooth. And then it's going to look odd here because I usually cut this out of the filming, but I'm just going to wave this in the air, and that's going to help to cool the cardstock down. And I think it does help with warping if you can cool the cardstock down quite quickly. And then I'm going to use a Swiffer cloth just to remove any of the excess anti-static powder. So here I've got my tag and my floral image, and then my sentiment cut down into a strip, and I'm just working out where I want everything to be before I stick it down. I like to have some elements hanging off of the tag, so I want to have that sentiment sort of hanging off, and that floral image kind of hangs off naturally because of the size of it. So I'm using that tape runner here just to stick that down, and this is where I found it really helpful because there was some adhesive on the kind of leaves that are hanging off, and that adhesive does remove really quite nicely, so I just removed that from the leaf there. So the tag actually does look really pretty from the back. In this instance, because it looks pretty, I'm actually not going to add an extra tag on the back. But if I did want to write on it, quite often I will cut another tag just from white cardstock so that I can write on the back. So I did just want to mention that. Next, I'm going to add some foam tape onto the sentiment, but I don't want to cover the entire back of that sentiment strip because I want the sentiment to be flush with the florals, and they're already popped up because of the 3 layers of the die cuts. So just 1 layer of this foam tape is the same kind of layer as those 3 die cuts, so I can just stick that down. And then I'm going to add some twine through the top of the tag. I like to add this kind of thinner twine and then tie it in a bow at the top. Sometimes this takes for a few minutes to like 10 minutes. Sometimes I have to redo the bow multiple times. But in this instance, it did work out quite well straight away, which is nice. So I'm just cutting off those tails of the bow there and just fiddling a little bit just to get it how I want it. And then to embellish the tag, I'm going to add some white enamel dots. This is from the Altenew Essential Black and White Enamel Dot set. And this is the first time I'm using these tweezers from Altenew. They are really nice, but I have to be honest, I did struggle with the enamel dots on this. But later on in the video, I'll show how they come into their own. I found them really helpful, but it is going to take me a little while to get used to those. So that's the tag finished. But I know that not everyone needs standalone tags or like standalone tags, so I'm going to show how I'm going to add it onto a card as well. But I do really like just having standalone tags for adding onto gifts or parcels. Sometimes I just send them on their own as well. So this is an A2 size white card base, so a finished size of 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches, and I'm going to add that ink blending like I did on the tag onto the bottom of the card base as well. So I'm using that same Caribbean Sky ink, using the large ink blending tool and blending that at the bottom, and I want to have the ink blending come up as far as it does on the tag, so that's going to kind of blend those two elements together. And then I can just add some foam tape onto the back of the tag, and then I can stick that down onto the card. And this is where those tweezers came in handy. That was really helpful to get the backing off of those foam tape. So I'm just sticking that down onto the card right in the middle. It's quite a large tag, so it kind of covers most of the card base. And then I'm going to add some more of those white enamel dots onto the card. And this time I'm going to kind of pop a couple underneath the tag. That is the benefit of using that foam tape as opposed to like building up the dimension with die cuts, is that you can kind of pop things underneath, which I quite like to do. And again, I think that just kind of helps blend the tag with the card, and like they were always meant to be together in the first place. So that's the card finished, excuse me, as well as the tag. I do apologise that it is a little bit difficult to see that ink blending here on camera, but in the photos it does show up quite a bit better, and it is a little bit more saturated, but still kind of light and airy. So this is the standalone tag next to the card. I do like them both, and I think it's nice to have two different options. So links to the products that I used will be in the description bar here on YouTube and also over on my blog. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.